Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today we're working on the 2024 KLR 650 and we're going to be working on suspension settings. So to start out, the front suspension of the 2024 KLR, the Gen 3 KLR, has no settings. So as you can see here, there's no settings up top, there's no settings down below. And we're going to be referring to the user manual for these suspension settings. And pretty much all it says for the front fork is to keep it clean so that way that actuation can move up and down as designed. So as you can see, I don't really have any kind of mud or anything caked in my suspension setting, so or in the forks that would interrupt or cause any issues with suspension. So we're going to focus on the rear end. So there's a dampening setting on the right-hand side of the motorcycle, and then there's a preload setting that's on the left-hand side of the motorcycle. So I'm going to start with that. So I'll meet you on the left-hand side of the bike. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to refer to the KLR 650 owner's manual. This is the manual that came with my Gen 3 2024. As you can see here on page 140 and 141, this starts the section for the suspension system. And as you can see here, they've got a front fork section, but there's no adjustment information in here. It's just keep your shocks clear of dirt and mud and any obstruction that would prevent the the proper movement of the suspension on the front. So here in the rear shock absorber section, we're going to start with spring preload adjustment. The spring preload adjuster on the rear shock absorber has 5 positions. It says in accordance with the setting table, turn the adjusting bolt clockwise, turn the adjusting bolt clockwise to increase spring preload. Turn the adjusting bolt counterclockwise to decrease spring preload. Notice, when the spring preload adjuster is at the position of the 1st or 5th, do not turn the adjusting bolt in opposite direction of the above procedures. The spring preloader adjuster will be damaged by the shock. Okay, so this is kind of interesting for me. I took a look at it before I started the video. So here's the table that they refer to for preload settings. As you can see, the softest setting limit is in 1st position. And it says standard is 2nd position. And then the hardest setting limit, hopefully you guys can see that, the hardest setting limit is in the 5th position. So when I read this, I thought, okay, so that means factory setting is going to be in the 2nd position. But as I'll show you, once I climb underneath there and take a look, and it's pretty easy to access the adjuster bolt, it's set at the lowest position. So it looks like it's in position 1 to me. So, and as you can see here in the table, if it's in the 1st position, if the adjuster position is in the 1st position, the spring action is the weakest. And this is setting, is the softest, some shock terminology here, and for loads that are the lightest. And the road is really good. So typically if you're in the 1st position, and I assume that's what all the bikes come from the factory, the road conditions are really good. So in my mind, that means you're riding mostly asphalt, not the off-road riding that I've been doing. So obviously I'm going to make that adjustment. And then the speed, which is not the speed of the bike, how fast you're riding, it's the speed of the shock itself. So if you imagine going over potholes and stuff like that, the rear wheel pushing down to go into the pothole and then coming back up as you're coming out of the pothole, that rate of suspension, the compression of the spring and the shock itself. So, and I'm just trying to think of me riding the bike. A lot of the stuff, I've got the new tires on there, and I've referred to in the videos how I can feel that it feels harder. I think there is more gyration in the bike now when I'm riding, over whoops and stuff like that, especially with the harder GOT tires on there, the Waypoint Adventure tires. So I'm hoping that these adjustments that I'm making is going to improve that ride. And also I'll be able to see if it just feels stiffer in general. So right now it's in position 1. So when I look at this, so the way I'm making my decision here is the load is light to heavy. So as you get closer to the 5th, and I'll show you when we actually do the adjustment there, then that makes it's more preload. It makes the spring stiffer. So I had a viewer that was like, hey, you know, I'm a big guy too. I think he said he was 220 pounds, and he was recommending put it on setting 3. And I think that's where I'll start. I'll just put it on setting 3 for preload. I'm 270 pounds, so maybe I should be on a 5. I'm not sure. So maybe I'll go to a 4 and just see how the performance changes there. So let's jump into the preload adjustment. Okay, so I'm on the ground, left side of the motorcycle. And this area is kind of hard to light. So I'm going to use Mrs. High's phone to get some light in here. So hopefully, there we go. So if you see there, so that bolt head there, that's the adjuster bolt. Okay, it's a 12 millimeter. And I'm gonna use a ratchet to adjust it. So right there, hopefully you guys can see this, it says number 1. So that tells me that I'm in the lowest preload. I see that number 1 there. So I'm gonna turn the adjuster clockwise to add preload. And I'm gonna go ahead and run this thing up to a 3 or a 4, we'll see. And I'm expecting, we'll see if I can, I don't know if you guys can see that without the light. I've got my 12 millimeter right here. Hopefully you guys can see that. So basically this goes on right there, like that. So I'm gonna set the camera down for a second, do a couple test spins, and then I'll see if I can't set up a view so you guys can see some adjustments on it. We'll give it a shot. Okay, so I made a couple turns on the preload adjuster in there. And as you can see right there, hopefully you can see right there, it's got, number 1 is the very tippy top. And basically that bottom collar, I'm gonna set my light down, kind of point at it. So this bottom collar right there, that's what you're using to measure the setting. So as I turned it counterclockwise, and here's the other thing, it has indentions in there. So it's not like it's just tightening a bolt, like you turn it and it clicks. So it's easy to tell when you're making adjustments, right? You turn it, you give it some torque, it clicks, and you made an adjustment. And then, so right now, I'm saying I went from 1, 2, so I'm in the 2nd position right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and add, at least get it to 3. I think I'll set it to 3 and kind of start there. And then I'll go out and do some riding. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it clockwise one more time, and it'll take me to 3. So let's try that. And I'm actually gonna see if I can't just do it while I'm holding my camera here. Let's see if it's as easy as... Yeah, wow. Yeah, it gets a lot tighter. So I'm gonna use both hands. Be right back. Okay, so after thinking about my adjustment here, since it was set to 1, then that second line you can see there would be 2, and then now the line that lower collar is setting on is 3. So I'm saying that 3 is the current preload. And springs in general, the more you compress them, the harder it is to continue to compress the spring. And I will tell you that after 3 is pretty tough. It was tough enough to give me pause and go back and think about, you know, what the setting is at currently. So since it was at 1, I have now moved it to 3. And so that was just 2 counterclockwise turns. And what I mean by 2 is 2 clicks. So 2 clicks in, I was at 1, now I'm at 3. And I'm gonna leave it right there and see how she does. So let's move over to the other side and talk about damping. Okay, so I'm gonna show this preload adjustment one more time. Let me get some light in here. So this is how I found it. Wow, this is light, there's light. Okay, so that's how I found it. See how that's the lower collar is on the line, that's number 1. So that's the lowest setting, okay? For me, so that setting is 1. For me to get to 3, it's just 2 adjustments. So let's see if I can do this one-handed without knocking the bike over. Oop, stand by. Okay, I went and grabbed my socket. It's easy to catch your socket when you're pulling your tool out there. So it's on setting 1 right now. So let's see if I can do one-handed. See, pulled the socket off again. All right, so now you can tell, so that 1 click, right? I turned it till it clicked, and then now I'm at setting 2. Let me grab my socket again. Okay, so to the 3rd adjustment, I'm going to try to do this right-handed, which means I'll hold my camera. All right. No, I'm banging around in there, but it's actually clicking over light. So there you go. So you can see it's at position 3. So the top line is 1, the one in between is 2, and then where the bottom collar is resting now is in the 3rd position. So the reason why I spent more time on this is because I wanted to show that it's actually clicking as it's adjusting. So it's a lot easier. You know, you give it enough torque, you make the adjustment, it clicks into the next position. So it's 1 click per position. So the full range, because it says in the manual, make sure you don't go too far in one direction. So like when I was at position 1, which is the bottom of the adjustable range, you do not want to adjust it backwards, counterclockwise. That can damage the shock. So that's the extra point I wanted to make. So looking at that, it was set at position 1, and then I put my 12mm on there, turned it clockwise, as in to tighten, and it's just made 1 full adjustment. It went to position 2. Then I turned it clockwise again, and it's clicking. So I'm spending the time to explain that because that way, you know, you don't want to damage your shock, right? So it's very clear that you're making the adjustment because it clicks. So from the factory, it was in position 1. It was in the softest setting. So you would only have 4 clicks, right? 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you don't want to go any further. You don't want to go past the 5. I'm not going to manhandle this thing and put it all the way down to the 5th position because I don't think I need that much preload. So I'm going to leave that on position 3. But the good news is, and it doesn't state this in the manual, is 1 click per adjustment. So that makes it just easier to understand. And it's kind of interesting because it feels like when it makes the adjustment, it feels like you might have snapped it off or something. But no, it just, you apply enough torque to push it to the next setting, then it just kind of clicks over. So anyway, just want to better explain that just in case anybody's nervous about making this kind of adjustment. All right, now let's move to the damping adjustment. All right, so here we are on the right-hand side of the motorcycle. And if we refer to the manual, go ahead and get this thing to focus. Rebound damping, not dampening, damping force adjustment. The adjuster is located at the lower end of the rear shock absorber. And it's actually on the right-hand side. It's this guy right there. It just takes a flathead screwdriver. Okay, so this thing says on page 142, turn the adjuster clockwise with a flat tip screwdriver to increase dampening force. Turn the adjuster counterclockwise to decrease dampening force. Do not turn the adjuster beyond the fully seated position or the adjusting mechanism may be damaged. So the difference between preload and damping setting is the starting point. So I should be able to back this guy so it's clockwise with a flat tip screwdriver to increase damping. So full counterclockwise should be the weakest position, okay? And that's the preload table. I'll have to switch to the other page. And then the standards are called out in the table. So let's take a look. So here, sorry about my shaky hands. Here is the rear shock absorber damping force setting. So adjuster position. So 3 turns out, and there's 2 asterisks on there, out from the fully seated position, turn fully clockwise. So if I go full clockwise and then back it out 3 turns, it's at the softest setting, okay? And what we want to do here, there again, you can kind of see the reference points. So the softest setting is the weakest, it's the softest for the lightest loads on the best roads like asphalt. And then the movement of the shock up and down, that's the speed. You have to pardon my lack of vocabulary this morning. So basically the standard is 3/4 turns out. Okay. So I'm going to see what this guy is. So basically what I'm going to do, use a flathead screwdriver, which I have right here. And then I'm going to turn it all the way in, full clockwise, and then make my adjustment. So the standard, so I guess the middle of the road, is just 3/4 turns. So not even a full turn out. So the hardest is 0. So if I turn it all the way fully clockwise, then I'm at the strongest dampening, the hardest as far as suspension feel for the heaviest loads. So if I think about it, the middle setting would be, so a turn and a half, right? So 3/4 turns out is actually applying a little more than 50% dampening. So I don't know. We'll kind of see where it's at. I mean, this is the kind of setting that keeps your suspension from pogoing and that kind of stuff. The ride has been pretty rough in uneven terrain and, you know, rough dirt road, service road riding. And I was just kind of attributing that to it being a bigger bike. And since I'm so heavy, I'm going to set it. I have to think about this. I'll let you guys know where I end up leaving it, but I'm going to go ahead and make the adjustment and see if it's, you know, at 3/4 turn or if it's like further out. And then I'll let you guys know here in a second. Be right back. Okay, so I just wanted to show the position of the adjuster. That is full clockwise. So that is the hardest setting. So if I were to rotate that thing 360 degrees and have it in the exact same position, that would be 1 full turn out. So I'm going to make an adjustment that's something less of that. You know, 3/4 turn or 75% rotation. You know, I'm just kind of translating what that would look like in my head. I'm going to at least do that because that's the standard. And I feel like it was definitely looser than that. I probably should have turned it counterclockwise it was pretty far out. It was definitely beyond what they call the standard. So they say it's 3/4 turns out. It was definitely softer than that from the factory. And I don't know if it was all the way out. Maybe it was. I don't think I did 3 full turns to bring it to the full stop on the clockwise. So not sure exactly where it was, but I'm going to do less than 1 turn back. And we'll see how it does. So let me make that adjustment. Okay, so as you can see, I made the adjustment. So I turned it 180 degrees, and that would be like 50% of a turn. A 3/4 turn out, that's like 75%. So I went a little further past that, and I feel like this is about 3/4. Like I say, you know, for any of you guys that have a lot more familiarity than I do on the suspension setup for the Gen 3 KLR, please leave me some comments. Let me know if you feel like I did anything wrong. I'm going to take it out for a ride. I'm at the Mile High Garage, so I'm not close to my usual testing grounds, but I will probably go later this week, probably at the same time this video posts. I'll have another video of testing these settings and just kind of see if it improves the ride. Like I say, for me, I'm like a 50-50. I like to be in the woods, so I just want the suspension to be set up where it's, you know, comfortable and performing in that mode. Thus far, like I say, it's from the factory. It just feels like a heavy bike to me, and maybe the suspension was set too soft, and that's what I mean. You know, I mean, it wasn't necessarily pogo sticking, but it was definitely, I could tell. You know, it doesn't feel like my 450. But anyway, so by the time this comes out this week, there should be a video right behind it to get some results on the adjustments. Like I said, please like and subscribe if you like these videos. This will go into the how-to category. And let me know if there's something you guys have found in the field for the Gen 3 KLR. Like I said, I'm a heavier guy, so keep that in mind. So I don't have a lot of luggage on this thing, but there's a lot of Mile High on it. So I kind of set it for a moderately loaded bike is kind of how I treated that. Okay, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks again.